Victoria is grappling with the dreaded return of COVID-19. The state has now recorded 8 locally acquired cases. Authorities believe the cluster may be linked to the outbreak in New South Wales. At least 70 people are considered close contacts and are in isolation. Masks are once again mandatory indoors, and all home gatherings have been slashed from 30 to just 15 people. Victoria will now close its border to all of New South Wales from midnight tonight. But from now, Victorian residents returning home must get tested and isolate for 14 days. If you arrive after midnight, you will have to do 14 days of hotel quarantine. It's not the only state taking action. South Australia has introduced a hard border with New South Wales. WA has gone a step further, shutting its border to Victoria, and that came into effect at midnight. In New South Wales, there are 10 new locally acquired cases. 5 are linked to the Avalon cluster, which now stands at 144 cases. 3 are linked to the Croydon cluster in Sydney's inner west. So far, 9 family members have been infected. Another 31 close contacts are in isolation and no source has been found. Barrett's.
Live now to our reporters, first to Serena Andaloro in Sydney. Serena, celebrations there were pretty tame, dampened by COVID overnight.
Barrett's, a very happy new year to you. Yeah, it was a very bruising year until the very end. We have the northern beaches in lockdown here. New Year's Eve celebrations heavily restricted across Greater Sydney, and still the new year was celebrated in resilient style.
An explosive start to 2021. A New Year's Eve like no other to farewell a year like no other. In Sydney, empty streets, the harbour foreshore barricaded. The city's 5 million plus residents told to watch the 7-minute fireworks display from home.
Happy New Year!
A lucky few with restaurant reservations had a front row view. But tough rules made it too hard for some venues.
We've had probably 300 cancellations.
At COVID Ground Zero on the northern beaches, the lockdown didn't stop celebrations. Groups of 10 allowed to gather outdoors in the southern zone, police out in force, reminding everyone of the rules. By midnight, the famous Corso was deserted. The usually bustling pubs and restaurants closed, but the area around Manly Wharf was teeming.
Happy New Year!
In Melbourne, no fireworks. Instead, diners took over the city after traditional celebrations were scrapped. No major fireworks display in Brisbane either, but there were crowds. Long queues to get into nightclubs in Fortitude Valley.
Yeah! It's New Year's Eve!
The city swamped, some letting off their own pyrotechnics. In the City of Churches, there were similar scenes. Adelaide's Main Street abuzz. A bittersweet goodbye to 2020.
I'm hoping that it's going to be a much better year for Australia.
Now, Sydney's COVID-19 situation is still volatile. Yesterday, we recorded 10 new cases of community transmission. The previous day, it was 18. We've seen the emergence of a new cluster in Croydon, which continues to grow by the day. Before that, all the cases, for the most part, were confined to the northern beaches. The Premier under increasing pressure to put all of Greater Sydney into lockdown, some saying that it is the only way to nip this new outbreak in the bud. But the Premier maintains that New South Wales is striking a delicate balance. South Australia doesn't have much confidence, though. It has slammed its borders shut from today.
All right, now let's go to Nathan Curry in Melbourne. Nathan, the Victorian border will close to New South Wales tonight.
It will, Barrett's, and that's tough news for any Victorians trying to get back across the border. If they get back today, they will still have to do quarantine, but they can do it at home for 14 days. But if they don't get across the border by midnight, they will be heading straight to a hotel for a fortnight. It's such tough news for many people who have really been caught out in the lurch here. Up in Sydney, there were flights coming to Melbourne last night, but they were all cancelled. So there is going to be thousands of people heading for the border today. And given the lines that we're seeing at at the checkpoint right across the border. It looks like it may be tough to actually get across that border by midnight tonight. The Victorian government is sympathetic, but it is taking this tough stance, and it really just does sum up how much Melbourne is on edge this morning. Restrictions are being brought back in place, so we do now have to wear masks inside again, and house gatherings are down from 30 to 15. I'm at the Sandringham Hospital at the moment. There is a testing clinic here that will open at 8:30, as will many other testing sites across Melbourne. We're expecting massive queues like we did see yesterday. All of this has prompted Western Australia to shut its border to Victoria once again, but at this stage, no other state is considering the same, Barrett.
OK, let's head north to Elliot Chipper in Brisbane. Elliot, a mutant COVID strain has been detected there.
Good morning. Yes, the fast-spreading UK variant of the coronavirus was picked up in a return traveller yesterday. He was a man in his 30s who travelled from Ghana in Africa. He was one of 3 people that tested positive in hotel quarantine yesterday and has now been taken to hospital for treatment. It comes just days after the first case of the South African variant of the coronavirus was also picked up here in Brisbane, the first case in Australia, a Sunshine Coast woman who'd also returned from South Africa. Both highly contagious and fast-spreading once in the community, but health authorities are confident that their strict hotel quarantine procedures and practices will be enough to ensure that the community is safe. That community was out in force last night, enjoying the New Year's Eve celebrations, partygoers packing the streets, thousands heading to entertainment districts such as Fortitude Valley. Police doing their best to keep people social distance. Venues also doing their best ensuring that quality and capacity crowds were kept out of the venues, which then saw the large crowds going out on the streets. But certainly a lot of people out and about celebrating, trying to forget 2020, but unfortunately the coronavirus is still here, even though it is the new year in 2021.
All right, team, thanks for the update. Angie has the rest of today's news.
Thank you, Brett. COVID has put a dampener on New Year's celebrations around the world, with many fireworks displays cancelled. In China, the light show in Beijing was called off, but in Wuhan, where the deadly virus originated, the city has largely returned to normal, with hundreds standing shoulder to shoulder. Celebrations were held as usual in New Zealand, with a 5-minute fireworks display and light show. Across Europe, final preparations are underway to ring in the new year, where millions of people are being told to stay home. While in America, fireworks have been cancelled in multiple cities as the country hangs under a COVID cloud. Live to US correspondent David Woywood now. David, how will America ring in 2021?
Well, it will be done unlike it's ever been done before, Angie. Much smaller, muted celebrations planned across America for later this evening. In New York, in Times Square, where we are used to seeing those very large crowds, well, they will tonight be replaced with just a small group of first responders who will watch the Times Square ball drop at midnight. Over here, though, in LA, all public fireworks have now been cancelled, replaced with a virtual countdown party, of course, all because of the COVID emergency. The United States is still battling this, though, as the President, Donald Trump, cut short his holiday in Florida today, heading back to the White House for his last New Year's Eve in the top job, for now at least. And moments ago, well, he took to Twitter with a New Year's Eve message praising his handling of the pandemic, which has now claimed almost 350,000 American lives.
Over and over again, we were told it would be impossible to deliver a vaccine by the end of the year. All of the experts said, absolutely unthinkable. Trump is exaggerating. It can't happen. And we did it long before the end of the year.
This message from President Donald Trump as he plans to challenge Joe Biden's win in Congress on January 6, Angie.
Thanks very much, David.